Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to explore the staggering human cost, and I mean the constant, daily dread that weighed on the minds of miners back in the early 20th century. We're looking at a period of history that literally powered human advancement, but it came at a truly terrifying physical and psychological price. We'll examine how we evolved from that absolute darkness into the highly regulated, safety-first operations we see today. If you've ever wondered what it actually took to extract the resources that built our modern world, well, this is a journey you definitely need to see.
To really wrap our heads around the danger in the mines in the early 1900s, we have to start with one devastating number: 3,242. That is how many miners died in the United States in the year 1907 alone. It was the deadliest year on record for the industry. To put that into perspective, since 1900, over 100,000 coal miners have been killed in accidents in the U.S. And get this, a staggering 90% of those fatalities happened in just the first half of the 20th century. This was an era of booming, rapid industrialization, but safety protocols, they were virtually non-existent. Workers were left entirely vulnerable.
So those historical numbers force us to ask a pretty crucial question. How did an industry so absolutely vital to human advancement, I mean the literal backbone of the Industrial Revolution, escape such a deadly era? How did we make the journey from those catastrophic, everyday losses of the early 1900s to today's modern operations where fatalities have been drastically reduced to single digits in many developed nations?
Well, that brings us to Section 1, the invisible killers, gases in the dark. Stepping back into those early, completely unventilated tunnels, you might think the biggest threat was a falling rock or a collapsing ceiling, right? But actually, the most terrifying threats were entirely invisible. Imagine the intense psychological toll of going down into the earth every single day, knowing your absolute worst enemy was something you couldn't even see. Miners face this constant, lingering threat from hazardous gas buildups that they call damps, which probably comes from the German word Dampf, meaning vapor. You had black damp, which was this mix of carbon dioxide and nitrogen that would just silently push the oxygen out of the air and cause suffocation. Then there was stink damp. True to its name, it gave off a heavy, rotten egg smell thanks to toxic hydrogen sulfide. You had white damp, which was carbon monoxide, deadly even in tiny, tiny amounts. And then there was afterdamp, which was the incredibly toxic aftermath that would flood a mine right after an explosion.
But of all of them, perhaps the most insidious was fire damp. This was mostly methane, and it is highly, highly flammable. If the methane concentration in the air down there reached between 5 and 15%, it became explosive. Now remember, in the early 1900s, miners were often working with open flame safety lamps, sometimes even just candles. So a simple spark or a flickering open flame would ignite this gas. But here's the real terror. That initial methane explosion was usually just the catalyst. That first blast would kick up all this dormant coal dust into the air, triggering a massive secondary coal dust explosion that could instantaneously wipe out an entire mine.
Which leads us to Section 2, Legacy of Abandoned Mines, Scars of the Boom.
You see, beyond the immediate danger to the miners themselves, this era of just rapid, completely unregulated expansion, especially between the 1860s and 1970s, left behind literal scars on the earth. In places like the Colorado Mineral Belt, the practices back then basically allowed owners to just take what they wanted and walk away. And the physical dangers from that are still lingering today. You've got abandoned, unventilated horizontal mine entrances, or adits, that are very likely still filled with those suffocating damps we just talked about. And literally just steps away, you might find completely unstable collapsing walls. Unwary tourists or people just out exploring these old districts can so easily stumble into these rotting, hidden structures. It makes the legacy of the 1900s a very present danger, even now.
And the danger isn't just physical either, it's chemical. These abandoned operations unleashed something called acid mine drainage. Basically, surface and groundwater react with sulfur-bearing rocks that were just left behind, and it creates sulfuric acid. That acid then leaches heavy metals, we're talking iron, copper, zinc, lead, right out of the rock and carries them straight into our waterways. This metal-laden drainage leaves this lasting, devastating environmental damage. It severely impacts aquatic life and even threatens the drinking and agricultural water sources that you and I rely on today.
All right, let's move into Section 3, the modern pivot, illumination and order.
So how in the world did we pivot from this chaotic, incredibly dangerous history? Well, the contrast between the past and present is like night and day. We totally replaced the unventilated, open flame reality of the early 1900s, where choking on invisible damps was just a daily gamble, with advanced technology. Today's reality features continuous electronic gas monitoring. We finally retired the old canary in the coal mine method. Now, miners carry closed-circuit escape respirators that give them a dedicated supply of oxygen if the ventilation ever fails. And the heavy machinery? It's all equipped with rollover protective structures, or ROPS, ensuring operators are protected at all times.
Let's look closer at this in Section 4, Ground-Level Safety, Protecting the Modern Miner.
Let's step right out of the history books and onto a modern job site to see the exact ground-level protocols that ensure everyone gets to go home safely at the end of the day. Today, survival starts before a miner even sets a single foot inside the shaft. It kicks off with mandatory personal protective equipment, or PPE. Modern hard hats have powerful, battery-operated headlamps, which is a massive upgrade from the open flames of the past. Workers have shatter-resistant eye protection and high-visibility vests. Every single piece of this equipment is engineered to fight the specific hazards of the workplace. Visibility and physical protection are absolutely front and center.
And that protection covers them from head to toe. Down on the ground, highly engineered steel-toed or metatarsal boots are non-negotiable. You have to remember, this is an environment dominated by rough, uneven terrain, falling rocks, and just massive, unforgiving, heavy machinery. So, this specialized gear is a crucial, everyday line of defense for the modern miner. The pure chaos of the early 1900s? It's been completely replaced by rigorous routine. A modern shift always begins with strict step-by-step inspections. First up, you inspect all your PPE daily. Second, you check the machinery seatbelts. And here's a wild detail. Those seatbelts have a strict install-by date, and they legally must be replaced every 3 years of service life. It doesn't matter if they look brand new. At 3 years, they're gone. Finally, clear communication is essential. Operators have to know exactly where everyone else is and what tasks are happening around them. They rely heavily on two-way radios to basically eliminate the dangers caused by low visibility underground.
We also have to talk about the air they breathe. Historically, airborne particles led to this devastating scourge of chronic lung diseases, most notoriously pneumoconiosis, which you probably know as black lung. The human toll of this disease is just immeasurable. Now, dust is definitely still a risk today, but modern operations fight back aggressively. They use built-in water sprays right on the mining equipment to immediately dampen and knock airborne particles out of the air. They mandate task-appropriate respirators. They conduct continuous air sampling of the entire work area. And they require routine medical screenings like spirometry tests to carefully and constantly monitor the miner's lung function over time.
And finally, the massive machinery of today operates under a completely different set of rules. Because there's virtually zero natural light down there, visibility is everything. So equipment operates within highly controlled parameters. You have clearly identified red zones around the machines, and personnel are strictly trained to stay out of them. And the golden rule is absolute. If visibility drops, or even if just one headlight burns out, the operator must immediately stop the equipment. You don't guess in the dark anymore. Period. You stop and you fix it.
We have come incredibly far from those devastating losses of 1907, going from an era where thousands perished every single year, carrying this constant dread of invisible threats, to the highly regulated, precision-engineered environment of today. It is an amazing testament to human adaptation, and really, to the profound value we place on human life. But it leaves us with an important question to reflect on. As we continue to extract the precious resources, metals, and fuels that power our ever-advancing world, how do we maintain this vigilance? How do we make absolutely sure that in our endless pursuit of progress, we never, ever return to the darkness of our past? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating, critical piece of history with me in today's Explainer.